Cheat Your with Fly Fish Food, and we have skill builder number 42 today. We have two skills that you're going to think are really simple, and one skill that's going to blow your freaking mind. It's about making a Goddard caddis body. If you want to see all these skills in one place, check out our description. We have a link there that will catalog all of our skill builders for your viewing pleasure.
That's a big brown, bro.
Z-Ment with the brush top. This is the source of much frustration on the fly tying front, albeit a very necessary evil. The worst thing that Z-Ment has ever done to me was it glued my mouth shut once. And a lot of times I used to just open the thing with my mouth, and I was trying to put it back in there, and I glued half my mouth shut. I got no help from my wife. But anyway, this is a cause of much frustration because this cap gets stuck on there, and then you can't use the whole bottle, and then you have to replace it, and then everybody's mad and upset. So I've been doing some experiments here, and I think the most critical way to get this to last the longest is to make sure that it doesn't tip over. Okay, so to ensure that this doesn't tip over, I did a video once on how to make this not happen, and then my friends at Hairline created this little bad boy. I think it's like, how much are these? These are $3 or something like that, but it is called whatever. So let's see it. The Zap Trap bottle holder. So what this does is it's just got, you can put multiple shapes of bottles in these, but you're just going to take this and you're just going to push it down, flush it up on the table, and you're in. That reduces the chances of you tipping this bottle over. And what I like to do actually is I like to put two of them on there. Yes, we're trying to get you to buy all this foam because this is what makes us rich. Why buy one when you can buy two? But seriously, it just gives a little bit more, I guess, oomph. It doesn't tip over as easily. And on my desk at home, not this fancy one that Brigham makes me tie on, I actually put double-sided tape on the bottom and stick it there. My super glue has a permanent spot on my desk, and it never tips over. Final tip that I do, you don't have to do it. I leave the cap unscrewed. This is not going to evaporate. It doesn't evaporate like other glues do. It's due to moisture once it gets applied to a surface. So just sitting in the bottle, loosely covered like that, it will ride happy like that for a long time. So those are the best ways that I've found to make your Zap-A-Gap last longer. All right, on this skill builder, we're going to be playing with hair. You can do these skills with deer hair, elk hair, but I'm choosing to use caribou and antelope. So this is antelope. You can see it in both cameras this way. And this is caribou. So I got a really cool gray patch of caribou. But what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to show you how to put them in a dubbing loop, and then I'm going to show you how to wrap that dubbing loop onto a fly. This is a Tiemco 9300. It's a little bit heavier wire dry fly hook, and this essentially is going to be for like a Goddard caddis body. All right, so the normal way to do a Goddard caddis is you're going to take a clump of deer hair or whatever hair you like, put it on your hook, flare it, spin it around, stack it to the back, and you do like 3, 4, 5 of those, depending on how complex your fly is, and then you get to trim it all up. And this is one of the reasons why people don't really like tying with deer hair, because it is a pain in the butt. But once you realize how to make it work for you, it can be fun. I'm going to show you maybe some alternative methods to making deer hair bodies, and at the very least, hopefully this is fun for you. So let's get going. First of all, I have 100 denier GSP thread. I chose, I think this is Nano Silk. Nano Silk is GSP thread, same thing. But this is the Nano Silk 6/0 in 100 denier. If you use GSP that's too thin when you do this, it will cut through your hair, especially if you're using antelope or caribou. We're going to put this into a dubbing loop. So the way that I like to do that, I just have one of these hairline material clamps. You can do this with almost anything. And what you can see is from my last go around here, I left a bunch of extra stuff here. I'm going to clean that up. When we do this technique, it's pretty critical that this stuff stays pretty close to the leather. So I'm not going to make a mess on the bench. Sorry, I'd let you watch me do this, but it's really not that critical. What we're going to do here is I'm going to use one of these material clamps. This is the 2-inch variety. And I'm just going to open that up and I'm going to sneak it in here, about, 1/8 of an inch away from the clean line. We're just going to put that in here and clamp it down. Okay, so I've got that deer hair, or this caribou hair, exactly where I want it. Now, the cool thing about this material clamp is now I can turn it this way and let go of the pressure a little bit, and it creates kind of a part in the hair. You can see how I've got a really cool part looking thing going, so I can just now come in here with some long bladed scissors and trim that out of there. That is not as easy as it seems to look, okay? So don't worry if that takes you a few tries. It's not super intuitive to do that. All right, so here I've got a giant clump of hair. I do not have any underfluff in here, or minimal. If you do have some, you can come in here with a comb and, pick it out. But as you can see, what happens is you pull hair out of your loop if you start doing that. So I really don't bother with it too much. So as you can see on this loop, it gets pretty thick right through here and thinner at the edges. So if I just manipulate this a little bit and just kind of open it up very lightly and gently, you're either going to do this nice and pat yourself on the back and go have a beverage to celebrate afterward, or you're going to drop all this stuff on the floor, and people are going to come into your fly tying room wondering why you're swearing so much. But anyway, this is kind of what I'm working with here. I'm going to take some long bladed scissors and just trim those butts. Man, I think I could be a barber. My homeboy JP that cuts my hair, I might have to go train with him. All right, so I'm going to cut both sides about like that. All right, so this will allow us to make kind of just a cool deer hair chenille. We'll try to get all these little butts out of here. But if you do that right, as you can see, like I have this tied and I can just set it aside and wait till I'm ready, okay? All right, so let's make a dubbing loop that's big enough for this fella. So I'd say about right here. You're gonna wanna come up here, do a few turns, and always close that dubbing loop off by wrapping it around itself, and then a few more turns. If you don't do that, there are a lot more chances of the deer hair falling out, because right here it goes to a little tip, okay? You want that to go to a point and not be open. All right, so we're going to wrap, thread forward, and then GSP is very, very slick. So I just take wax, whatever wax you have, go ahead and use it. I guess like chapstick might work too, but I'm going to wax the thread and then run my fingers up and down that thread to kind of just seep it in, make sure it's a little sticky. And then I'm going to take a dubbing twister. This is the heavier one from Sman. It's the red one. It just has a little more mass for doing bigger stuff. So I'll throw that in there, and in goes our dubbing loop. Okay, so once this is in here, see my left finger, I'm putting my left finger here to close that loop off. So it's pinching that closed. So there's a lot less chance of there getting any slack down in this section of the loop. Okay, so now that loop is ready to twist, but I'm going to double check it again, and if I need to adjust it, I can, and if I needed to, I can just push some fibers up. I can push some down. You could trim it. I will warn you though, trimming, it's a good way to kind of screw it all up, so try to avoid trimming it as much as you can at this point. But as you can see, we've got a really clean, cool dubbing loop. I can move it around. It's not spinning all around. So this is why GSP is so important. So I'm going to twist this dubbing twister, and you can see it's starting to spin up, okay? And because the deer hair is so thick, it might not twist all the way up. So all I do, and I'm going to brace my hook by holding onto it here. Probably do it this way for both cameras. And then I'm just going to lightly pull. And you can see how that turns the deer hair into a nice little chenille. Okay? It's almost a perfect little chenille. Maybe a few more turns. Otherwise, you'd be twisting this GSP up so much it would bunch up all down here by the twister. So all you do is twist it up, give it a nice little pull, and then you can impress your buddies when you show them that technique. All right, so when I first started doing these, I would kind of go in here and make a turn like this, you know, and try to wrap as close to I could, or you know, to the other wrap. You can do that. For the sake of time and for the sake of probably the most effective way to do this, I'm going to show you how I do this in rotary in rotary method. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create tension here. So see how I'm managing the dubbing twister up here, and then my threads in my pinky. You can put it in a bobbin cradle if that's what you like, no problem. So as I turn this, watch how the deer hair compresses even more and kind of falls right into place. It's not matting on top of itself at all. So after 3 or 4 turns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some tweezers and use that as a hair packer, and I'm just going to push that hair back into itself just a little bit. Okay, 3, 4, 5 more turns, and you can see I'm going fast. Like, you don't have to really prep this at all. Push that one back again. Keep going forward, and it's okay if you get. I'll just wrap it all the way to the eye of the hook. All right, so I did back that off. I just wanted a little bit of stuff to be in here to show you this next thing. So I'm gonna cut off or tie off this loop, okay? And I'm just holding it above me just to kind of exaggerate what I'm doing here. So what we have here is we have a whole bunch of fibers here, and down in the middle of this is the core of thread. And I want to cut the thread, but sometimes if you get in here and start chomping away at stuff with your scissors, you can cut stuff you don't want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open my scissors just a little bit, and I'm going to put those right in where I want to cut, and then I'm just going to pull the thread into my scissors, and that way I don't cut anything but the loop or the thread, okay? So it didn't cut any deer hair. This works really well with all kinds of dubbing loops, especially dubbing loops with longer fibers like semi-seal. But anyway, there you have it. That's the best way to cut off a dubbing loop. I saw a British guy do this, and I was just intrigued. I thought, that's insane. I'll never do it, but here I am doing it. So I'm going to show you how to trim this into a Goddard Caddis shape. And I might do something that you haven't seen before on this one. So you want to make sure to pay attention. Brigham, you listening? He said yes. All right, awesome. So the idea with a Goddard Caddis is it's skinny in the front, fat in the back, flat on the bottom. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this to a rough shape. First cut's going to be on the bottom. Just chunk all that out of there. Boom. One cut gets it almost where I need it. If you put your scissors too far back in here, you'll get a nice shank full of metal, and you might ruin your scissors. So use someone else's scissors or just be really careful. All right, so now I'm just going to rough cut this about like this-ish, okay? Now that is about as ratty as it gets. The only good part about this fly is the underside where it's somewhat packed. So what do? We call in the trusty tan colored lighter. I'm going to burn this to get shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of keep that old lighter moving. And I'm going to kind of sweep this along the edge and see how it catches on fire, and then I can put it out. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking because this is still kind of a new skill for me. But the idea is I'm going to singe the sides and make kind of like a sweeping upward point, and I'm going to try to taper the body in the front. All right, so here goes nothing. So I have kind of a rough shape. We'll look at it from the top, and as you can see, well, one side's a little fatter than the other, and it kind of just looks like a pill shape, so we need to make this more like a Goddard. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and burn some of the front off. All right, so we're getting close. And as you can see, I can brush it with my fingers to put out the fire, and also it restores it back to the natural caribou color. So from here, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup work, and Mr. Tom Rosenbauer would be very proud because I'm using his very favorite tool in the whole world, the cautery tool. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up some of the stuff from on the back of the hook. Good way to preserve your scissors. Now that didn't look like it was going to turn out like that, did it? So you can sit here and pick around at it and really round it off with the cautery tool, but for every one fiber you're going to burn off, you're going to burn about 3 more you didn't mean to burn off. And that's fine. This is art. But anyway, as you can see, the body of this Goddard caddis is now flat on the bottom, and it has a tape, like a big butt. It tapers down toward the front, and also on the top, it kind of tapers to a little bit of a point. So it really has a natural look to it. Anyway, this has been a super fun technique to play with, and I plan to implement it in more flies. This is going to be a funny one, Brig. But it's real. Okay, so one day someone asked me, they said, "Hey Cheech, you have big hands. You see these are giant hands." And they said, is it harder to tie flies with big hands than it is with small hands? And I said, well, respectfully, I was never given the opportunity to try tying flies with small hands, so I couldn't tell you. However, finger dexterity is a big part of tying flies, like grabbing a chunk of deer hair with all 5 fingers and placing it on the fly, or passing materials back and forth. There's a lot of hand-eye coordination and things you can do to get better at it. Now, laugh at me, but when I drive to work, sometimes this is what I'm doing. I'm taking my hands and I'm going to make a pattern. So I'm going back and forth with my hands, and then I'm going harder. So I'm going to go like to one finger, then the next one, and then back to the same finger every time. And it makes your brain and your hand work together, and it makes your fingers bend certain ways that you wouldn't normally do it. This is 100% serious too. Like this stuff will help your fly tying, because if you can place the materials properly on a fly and have the finger dexterity to hold it there and place your thread exactly where you want it, your flies are going to be cleaner. So come up with all kinds of stuff. Like you can go all just up and down your hand. If that's hard or too easy, then change it up. Make a pattern that is going to be hard to follow. I'm just making it up as I go. But anyway, the more you mess around with your hand while you're doing that, the better you will be at tying flies. 37% better, Brig.